Throw the boss out? You mean like literally? No, not literally. Are you an entrepreneur? Are you capable of owning a business? We've got your answers in today's show. All right, welcome to another episode of Throw the Boss Out podcast with Jim Suhan and Joe Leach. We're glad you're joining us today. Jim, thanks again for joining me.
There's no way my name should be first on this podcast. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Welcome to the Throw the Boss Out podcast with Joe Leach and Jim Suhan.
Much better.
And we're off. Today we're talking about several things. Actually, if Roy Smalley was just here, correct?
He was.
So
you smell the cologne?
I was wondering if I'm actually talking through the same microphone as the shortstop extraordinaire of the Minnesota Twins.
You are.
Can you do me a favor? Tell him I want his autograph.
I can tell him that.
And tell him that I want his autograph because 40 years ago, right? So you're a kid.
Not that we would date ourselves on this show.
I'll just date myself. I might as well. Nobody else would date me. So it's a good thing I have a wife. So 40 years ago, you're a kid, you're 8 or 9 years old, and you learn that you can write a letter to the Minnesota Twins. And you can write a letter specifically to a baseball player and say, I want your autograph. And so I got gung-ho, and I'm writing letters to all of my favorite players, Roy Smalley being one of them. And so one by one, in the mail, just super excited. You can't wait to get to the mailbox, and there's another letter from a Minnesota Twin. You open it up, and it's a picture of them, and there's an autograph on there, and you're all excited, and some of them are writing little notes and quotes and things like that. And the day I get my Roy Smalley one, I open it up, and there's a picture of Roy Smalley with a stamp. It's just a stamp. It's a blue stamp with his autograph. So I got...
A stamp?
I got robbed.
How can you fit an autograph on a stamp?
No. I'm glad you clarified that. The autograph was a stamp.
Oh, it was
like a rubber stamp.
Autograph. Okay.
It was a stamped autograph. So I feel
now
like,
I understand.
And I would prefer if he could find one of those pictures of him when he was 25 years old. It's black and white, right? And to sign that. But in lieu of that, I'll take his autograph on a napkin.
We'll get you Roy Smalley's autograph. And
that'll make me feel a lot better.
And I feel so badly that Roy had a clubhouse worker stamp his autograph for you when it's so much easier when the clubhouse guys just forge autographs for all the other players.
Hey, truth is, I wouldn't have known what his...
That's exactly. I can't. I mean, that's the way they used to do it. At least Roy was honest enough to have somebody stamp his signature on it.
It was honesty, right? It was a pure form of honesty.
With Roy, though, what I'm really hoping is he included a couple of strands of hair because that's what he's known for.
There was if there were strands of hair, I missed them. I wasn't looking for them apparently, or something.
Sad. Just sad. We'll get you a Roy Smalley autograph, and
I would appreciate that. It'll make me feel better.
We will talk a lot of business on this show. Joe's about to explain entrepreneurship and how to pronounce it to me. I do want to introduce everybody and welcome everybody to talknorth.com. It's our new website, our new podcast brand name, our new network brand name. You can find Smalley on baseball, John Krasinski on basketball, Russo on hockey, Ryan Shaver with a kind of a general talk show with me, John Millay on preps, Tim Yoder on Vikings. We have a fan show. This is our business show on the network, right? So we try to expand things a little bit. And as you all know, I have started a podcast network. I've been running it for a couple of years. I really don't know what I'm doing. I have enlisted some help. So this podcast is in part for me to learn how to run my business. But even more to the point, it's to help you learn how to run your business.
Well, let me just say, it's to help people think differently is really what we want to do. I got to be really careful not to overbill this as just a pure business show. Although that's most of what we're going to talk about because most of these philosophies have kind of found their way over to the businesses that I have, and that's where they've kind of manifest themselves. So the big question today is this whole entrepreneurial thing. I'm not even sure if I pronounced it correctly, but so my first question is for Jim. When you decided to start the podcast business, which it is, did you think about it? Did you think about it as a business, or did you start it and then go, oh, I guess I have a business? Or did you always think, I want to have a business?
I never thought I wanted to have a business. I never thought I was qualified to have a business. And I never would have gotten into a business if I felt like other businesses were doing things the right way. I basically started this because I was doing podcasts for another company, and I didn't like anything about the way they did things, didn't like the sound quality, the equipment, the philosophy, the way they paid people. And so I basically said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I think I can do better than this. I'm going to try. So I didn't think of the word entrepreneurial. I didn't really even think of it as business. I just thought, I'm going to give this a shot, whatever it is.
And do it better than people you had seen doing it at the moment.
Yeah, and goal 1 was to do it better. Goal 2 was to actually, make some money doing it. And as we all know, that's the hard part.
This is sin. Jim, did you just say you did this to make money?
That as a secondary goal, yeah. And you know what? The longer I do it, the more it becomes a primary goal.
Well, you shouldn't be ashamed of that. That's probably another show. I think that could be a whole show in itself. Just the whole idea of profit not being a swear word or a negative word, and why everybody is doing what they do. So we'll definitely talk about that. The word entrepreneur, I talked to several of my, I would say close friends, but they range. They're business owners that have very different businesses. So I feel like I got a very good cross reference of different types of businesses and sizes of business. And we talked about the word entrepreneur, and what I found is that word resonated with some of them and not with others. So when I asked the question, are you an entrepreneur? 2 of them immediately said, well, I'm a business owner. I don't know that I would call myself an entrepreneur. So that started a whole new question that I wasn't even, it went down a path that I wasn't even planning on going on when I was sitting down and talking with them. So I said, what's the difference? What do you think the difference is? And I also reached out to people that I knew on Facebook and asked the same question after this had happened. And I got a lot of different answers, but they all boiled down to one thing. And I even looked this up. And the word entrepreneur, when you look at the definition, the word risk comes in. And the other word that was associated with it, as I asked people to differentiate business owner from entrepreneur, was innovation. So they're essentially saying, well, I could be a business owner just doing some, simple basic business that I didn't create. Maybe I took something somebody else is doing, I made it a little bit better. And I would stop people and say, well, right there, you innovated, right? And what business person hasn't taken a risk?
It's kind of part of the definition, right?
Somebody is going to say, oh, well, this type of a person didn't take a risk in their business. But I am confident that I could basically point out the risk that they took. Anytime you go out and say, I may or may not get money, it's a risk. Even if you got like a day job and you're doing something extra, your time is valuable and you are risking, in any case, you're risking that. So I don't know that I feel that there's a lot of difference. It could be maybe shades of gray, so to speak, or, I don't think there's that much difference. The other question that came up was, are entrepreneurs or business owners, so if we just look at them as one thing for the moment, are they wired that way? Are they born that way, I guess is the question. You hear people say that about salespeople a lot. That guy was born with a gift of gab. And salespeople themselves say, I truly believe that you either got it or you don't. And the response was split on whether a business owner, entrepreneur is born with it or, if they can achieve it over time. What do you think about that?
Well, I look at everything through a prism of sports because that's what I've spent most of my time thinking about for decades. And I would guess it's a little like the sports world where there's some people who do have the gift. You can't want to be Mike Trout. You can only be Mike Trout if you are Mike Trout. I know a lot of baseball players who have worked like crazy, who were much harder workers than people in the big leagues. They just didn't have it, you know? So I think to be great, you probably have to have a gift, but to be functional, to make something work, then maybe you can be just somebody who works at it.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's going to come up later on as we talk, because I agree 100% that you have to have something. I've figured it out. I've got the something right here on this piece of paper in front of me, but it's not what you think.
Okay.
And that's what I found to be pretty amazing about the research and doing this. I love doing this. I love asking people questions. I love getting to the bottom of these things. And no, it's awesome. So one of the friends that I had on Facebook sent over a Gallup poll, and I looked up something else that were based on somebody's idea of the 10, traits or characteristics of entrepreneurs. So I tallied those up and said, I'm going to take these 4 business owners, including me, and say, how much do these things apply? Right? This is somebody else's impression saying to be successful at owning a business, to be an entrepreneur, these are the things that you need to have. And the businesses, of course, it was me. It was another business person that had a similar size business to me. Somebody had 1,000 employee business, so a really big one, and one person that had a business that was kind of right in between revenue and employee wise. So here are some of the 10 things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but here are some of the 10 things that the Gallup poll, this is one that was sent to me, they keep their focus on business. Only one person of the 4 people could honestly say that was a priority, that they were good at it, that they identified with that. They have confidence in themselves and others. Not one of them could quite identify with it. Now, some of these, it varies in situations.
Sure.
So obviously they're confident with each other, or confident with themselves and other people. But all of them talked about a healthy insecurity that drove them. Always wondering, did I do that right? Could I have done that better? Is there something I missed?
Is my unhealthy insecurity okay too?
Yeah, no, I find your unhealthy insecurity to be really engaging. No, it's the best of just about all of them I've seen. So
I got that going for me.
You're way up there, man. No doubt about it. They know how to delegate. Only one person felt that they were good at that. They persevere. 2 out of the 4. This is interesting. They are independent. All 4 people agreed. Independent-minded. Seek out knowledge. 3 of the 4. Good spokesman for their own business. Not one person felt
really
like that was really in their fiber. Everybody believed in their business, but everybody kind of took more of an approach that if I do a great job, if I build a good business, that people will come, that I will, if I fill a niche, that kind of a thing. None of them felt like they were really great at being out there promoting their businesses. So they take risks. Again, all 4 people said, yep, absolutely took a risk. Goes back to what we talked about earlier, that's always going to be the case. There was another one from, this came from someplace. Do I have to tell people where it came from?
No.
So this other thing, right? Passion and motivation, really only one person. Now, again, all these vary. Like when you define the passion and motivation, it could change. Not afraid to take risks. Again, all 4 people. Let me just go over some of the highlights. Effective planning. This one says effective planning, not over planning skills. That varied a lot. Not one person in the group did written forecasts or written planning.
I can identify with that.
But all of them had a plan in mind. All of them thought about the next steps, what was going on. And so that could either be none or all answered that correctly. And adaptable and flexible was another one where it was 2 out of 4. So what does this all mean? What does all that stuff mean? It means that there really are no qualifications for being an entrepreneur or a business owner.
God, so I might be qualified then. If there are no qualifications, I can say I'm qualified.
If there's anything I want to come out of this show is that whoever is listening knows there's hope. right? So if there's no qualifications, and before I said I have the answer, there could be a conflict there. People are saying, so Joe, what's the deal here? You're saying there's no qualifications, but there is something. And there is a common denominator. There's an X factor, but it is not an attribute. It's not a skill. It's not any of these 10 things that are on any list whatsoever. It's a force inside that could be different for every single person. And all that's required is that you have a force inside of you that is more powerful than the fear of taking the risk.
Wow. This is deep. This is deeper than a business show.
I told you.
Most business shows would be.
I told you. Socrates, Plato, those guys would be proud of us.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to ask a question, and it might be something we address here. It might be a different show down the road.
That's a different show, Jim.
It probably is. So think about this. Either maybe as a future show. Something I came across in reading about how to run a business, how to do all of this stuff, was the idea that setting goals can be a negative. And whoever it was I read who said setting goals can be negative, they made the argument that if you set a goal, you're probably either going to underachieve in relation to that goal, which can be frustrating, or you might surpass that goal, which renders the goal moot. So again, you can either attack that now, or we can save that for a different conversation.
I'll attack it with full force.
Okay.
I 100% disagree with the person that you talked to.
Interesting.
You have to set a goal because you need something to measure. Measurements, you will hear me talk about analytics, and you'll hear me talk about something I call triangulation. I'm not sure if it's right or not, but you can learn so much from 3 pieces of information that are just somewhat related to any topic. And that will be a whole show, actually, because that can be extremely helpful. I believe personally that you should absolutely have a goal, and I do believe you should write down something. You should have some idea. I am not a detailed person, so I don't believe in business plans, for example. We're going to have a whole show about business plans, and you're going to hear me say time and time again, the right amount of business planning is perfect, which is kind of one of those things that we were just reading. I agree 100%. You should have something. Just don't have nothing. There we go. Double negatives right there. So I would have to say that that's my feeling, and that is another show.
That is another show, and the fact that
good one.
You just have to have something and not nothing. I might be more qualified than I thought.
I'm telling you right now, you and everybody listening has hope. They have hope. So this force thing. I'm being very careful not to say that it has to be anything. I can tell you what it is with me. What it is with me is I want to be free, and I want to be able to make my own decisions more than anything else, right? I don't want anybody restricting me, telling me what to do, saying that I work for them. I cannot stand having those restrictions. And that force inside of me is enough to make me take the risk, take the jump, and to do those things. Now, does that mean that that's what everybody else has to have? No, not at all. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to get some feedback from people about if they dig deep and say, well, what really is that force? Because until you think about it in this way, you're probably stuck on, I'm a business owner, or I'm an entrepreneur, or I could be an entrepreneur because I have these skills, right? But the skills all come from something at the core of your being. You ever hear people talk about don't treat the symptom? Like when people are sick, you think about how many times do you take medicine that its purpose is not to cure what you have. It's basically just to solve the symptom, right? Keep you from coughing. Take away the rash.
Medicine, man.
Yeah, exactly. I had a friend who refused to take Tylenol or aspirin anytime. And I'd say, why do you do that? He says, because I want to know that there's something wrong. And the other interesting thing, I've heard other people say that, but he said, I want to know when it goes away. Because then I can equate that to, right? Like I changed something.
Yeah.
Exactly. He said, if I just keep covering it up and just hoping for it to go away, I don't learn anything from it. So the same thing can kind of be applied in all of this, is that you don't work on, like you want to have a business, right? And you think, well, I need to take more risks. Well, you're not going to fix taking more risks by thinking about taking more risks. You're not going to take more risks, right? And in essence, thinking about anything, let me rephrase that. Trying to change your thinking through thinking. Has that ever worked for anybody?
It sounds painful, actually.
It's probably what I do. It's probably what I attempt to do too often. That's why my wife looks at me and says, what's going on in that head of yours? But the reality is, until I make a change of some sort, right? Until I actually do something differently, nothing's going to change in my brain. And I think this is the seizure that happens with a lot of entrepreneurs, is they think, well, I'm just going to keep thinking of all these great ideas. I'm just going to keep thinking. I'm going to keep thinking. And one of them is going to work out. And I'm going to be negative. It's not going to happen. You're not going to create a new business. You're not going to get out of what you're doing by just thinking about it. You have to actually take some action and do something. It's very, very, very important. One of the friends had commented about the disappointment, thinking of the idea and then thinking of all the things that would go wrong and then giving up. And I think that's a very common thing for people. So I would say, if we're going to call this a numbers game, I would say most entrepreneurs think of 50 or 100 ideas that they act on 4 or 5 at least. And then finally they do something. And then that may or may not work.
Right. Yeah.
So the other thing that I've known for years is the testament to whether you've done something or not in a business. So whether you've officially started a business or not, because I think there's a lot of people that get an idea, they do some research, they might even take a little bit of action. They might kind of dip their toe in the water, they might do something, but then they back off and go, oh, it's not going to work. Same kind of disappointment thing. The key there is you have to spend $1 more than your comfort level.
I've done that.
On your idea.
Again, I qualify.
Yes. Because that's starting a business. That's the definition of starting a business, is investing $1 more or $1 beyond your comfort level. And if that fails, good for you. Really. I mean, you cannot possibly start a business better than by failing in one before it.
And what's your ratio like? You run 3 businesses currently?
Yes. I think the ratio I gave you was pretty accurate. So I would say 50 ideas. I would say 4 to 5. I started a toy company. I started a trucking company. I was writing a job search book that that was back when the internet wasn't really there. And I thought, someday I'm going to write the book. Someday I'm going to put this on the internet. So there's 3 businesses right there that I invested some time and information in. I would say the trucking company is the only one that I spent $1 more than I feel comfortable with, and far more comfortable after the fact. But I'd say that was the one. And then the first business I started, I'm trying to think if the second one. The other 2 businesses came to me. So in all honesty, through just a chain of events of being in my other business, put me in contact with people, and the other ones kind of happened on their own. But I also will talk about some of the things that we're going to have a show about. Now, what business should you start? Should you decide to go down this path? And I'm going to talk a lot about picking a business and how I would have done things differently than I did back then. But does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what I wanted this show to be, is you explaining things to me. And if you're explaining things to me, you're explaining things to a broad audience as well.
So how about this core thing? Are you on board with me there? The core, let's apply it to anything you want now, since so not to drag you into the business thing, but think about anything. Let's talk about writing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and different things for me. The business, running a podcast network, was me wanting to control content and control who I worked with. And with the philosophy being, if it makes it big, great. If it makes it, great. If it doesn't make it, at least I didn't compromise on the way I wanted to do things, and we took a good shot at it. And I could still feel good about it. Writing was more of a, I started reading when I could pick up a book. I read my entire life. I ended up reading a lot of sports stuff. I loved baseball. I loved sports. And I didn't really realize that you could combine the two until I got to high school and started working for the school newspaper. So that was whether it's nature or nurture, that's what I was going to do. I was going to find a way to read, write, and be around the written word, and it just happened to be in the sports world. But starting a business was much more about being at a certain age and just not wanting to work for people I didn't think knew what they were doing.
As far as writing goes, would you say that if we had a list of the 10 things a writer needs, just like we had with the 10 things an entrepreneur supposedly needs, would you go on that list and say, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, I'm not so good at this, I'm not so good at that?
Yes.
Okay. Would you mind sharing some of that? I think it's going to be very helpful for
Okay. Off the top of my head, with the right to go back and revise later.
Yeah, no, that's not true.
Let's see. Well, you have to have command of the language. I think I do okay in that department. You have to be able to understand what good writing is. It's hard to be a good writer if you don't know what you're trying to do. And a lot of people who dabble in writing don't really know what they're trying to do. They just kind of throw stuff. They just think whatever I say is fine. However I say it is fine. Not really. Not if you want to be a real writer. You have to understand specificity and accuracy. You have to know how to structure. You have to know how to toy with structure. You have to know how to elicit a reaction, how words impact people. I'm probably not, here's an area where I would not give myself high grades. I'm not a great grammarian. That's
a word?
I just made it up. That's what I mean by not being a great grammarian.
The irony.
Yeah. It may or may not be a word. So I actually don't obsess over grammar, because what I tend to do is write around the stuff I don't feel strongly. If I don't think I'm great using a certain, word or clause, if I don't think I know how to do it, I'll just write around it. I just won't use it. Who and whom, I should know exactly how to use that. I really kind of do, but I don't like thinking about it, so I just usually write around it. To me, the word whom, when used accurately, still sounds awkward. It sounds like a word you actually wouldn't use in conversation, so I avoid using it.
It sounds kind of snooty.
Yeah, it does.
It really does.
And so I'm actually,
And you're not a snooty guy at all.
Well, I don't like language that puts on airs. So I would rather, you're not supposed to end sentences with a preposition, but to revise your sentence to not end with a preposition, you usually make it sound really stilted and snooty. So I would rather end the sentence with a preposition. So I don't worry too much about a lot of the classic rules. I just write in a way that I think resonates with the reader. So grammar isn't a strong suit. I'm not great at editing myself, because I tend to, when I revise something, when I look it over, I tend to see what I think should be there, not what is actually there. So I do need an editor, that's a short list of things I'm good at and things I'm not good at.
Okay. So two roads I want to go down here with this. One is, you said you have to know what you're doing. Not being a writer, I don't even know what you mean by that. Explain that.
And I think I kind of got into some of the tangents there. You have to understand the importance of word choice. You have to understand how, structure, how to alter structure depending on the kind of story you're doing. Frankly, you have to have failed a certain amount. You have to have had experimented a certain amount. I mean, I go back, I know when I started off my career, I wrote some utter crap, just
Like what?
Horrible stuff.
Like what? Can you name one that we can go back and look at?
Actually, it's probably stuff I couldn't find because I didn't want to find it. But I mean, using cliches, you can immediately identify a bad writer because they use cliches. And when I was young, I might have thought using this cliche would be good because I saw it someplace else. You can't do it. That's your writing needs to be original. It needs to be of yourself, and another mistake I made when I was young, like I would read somebody, I go, God, I love the way that person writes. I'm going to kind of try to emulate them a little bit. Well, then you're not really writing like yourself. So, man, we go down this road, I could talk for hours. We don't want that. But there's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of trial and error. It is beneficial to make mistakes when you're young and learning, but you also have to know how to correct those mistakes at some point.
So that helps me understand things a lot. Is there anything that you were not great at that you've improved on?
I would say getting to the point quickly. Because when I was young, I wanted to write long, flowing, glorious leads, and I wanted to play with the language, and I wanted to have fun with the language, and I wanted to imitate great writers who might write an 85-word paragraph that just worked beautifully, like Faulkner or somebody. And, now I'm at a point where, what I am? I'm a newspaper writer. I'm a sports writer. People in the internet age don't have a lot of time. They don't have a long attention span. I'm going to try to grab you within the first 2 paragraphs. If not in the first 3 words.
You just made my point perfectly. So what you were saying is when you first tried to fix the problem, you approached it from the symptom. We've been talking about symptoms. You approached it from the end point. You tried to fix the outcome, right? You tried to say, I want to do it like this person. Mm-hmm. So in the end, I want to change, instead of what comes out right now from me, I want to replace that with something else from somebody else, or I want to emulate somebody. I want it to be different. And I assume, well, you already said it didn't work.
It's not that it was always horrible, but it wasn't ideal. It wasn't optimal.
Then I heard you say, you figured out you just had to be you. And so something happened, meaning you probably read one of your columns in which you were attempting to emulate somebody, and maybe it even got out in the public. True?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and again, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, is in like my 20s, which is 85 years ago. But it's okay. You can laugh at me. You don't have to pull the microphone away from your mouth when you laugh at me. You just laugh at me.
I was trying to imagine.
That's a big part of the job.
I was trying to imagine you at 105 years old, and it just.
Well, Sid's 98, so look at Sid and just look at somebody who isn't as healthy as Sid.
I don't think you're going to look like Sid, though. When you get to that age, I just don't think you don't look like he did when he was younger. So
no, that's true. And Sid is a force of nature. Whatever else we could say about him, he is a force of nature. I've never been a force of nature.
So, but my point in this is that you have to fix whatever it is at the core. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about a business and starting a business, you're going to find your answer, right? So I kind of lied when we started this whole thing out. I said I had the answers. My answer is that you have the answer. You have the answer deep down inside. And it is, if you're willing to do something you've never done before, if the force inside of you is strong enough to get you to do that, then you are an entrepreneur. You can own a business. And if it isn't strong enough, you will not be an entrepreneur. You will not start a business. And I think it's important for people not to give up. I've talked to many people who said, well, I keep thinking of these ideas and then it doesn't come to fruition. So I must not have the ability. I must not be built to do it, whatever. And then they tell me 2 weeks later, I came up with another idea. That tells me you're not done. Mm-hmm. You're not done. And don't feel bad when you come up with an idea and it doesn't come to fruition. Actually embrace that and say, all right, that's one more thing that I went through that's getting me potentially closer to this whole thing of owning a business or being an entrepreneur. The consequences of failure are important for growth. And as I was driving down here, I was thinking, there's got to be there's something different about entrepreneurs when they get to the point of having a business, and these things that happen in your life that are profound and life changing. And it occurred to me that it's consequences. It's experiencing a consequence of some sort of an action because it creates a shift in your mind. Now, a lot of people get consequences mixed up with rules, right? So they think, well, I have rules that I have to stay within, but rules are meant to be broken. Consequences can't be broken. And an entrepreneur, when that person makes a mistake, they suffer a consequence, not a broken rule. If somebody is in a business and working in an environment, they're working with rules. The company is probably giving them rules. Stay within these rules, right? And we all know that rules are meant to be broken. So you break the rule and you go, oh, yep, sorry, won't do that again. Somebody says, oh, don't break that rule. You go, okay. But that's not a consequence. The consequence is I just put out some money and I'm not getting it back for anything. And so I think that's the big thing that happens when you become an entrepreneur. But I also think that's the transition that happens for somebody that gets out of this seizure of thinking about. So that's what I would say. I would say stay with it. If it keeps coming back, it's still there, right? Don't throw it out because it's not. I would say you don't even have the ability to throw it out. If it keeps coming back, it is there. Stick with it. Don't be ashamed. Don't be disappointed. Well, everybody's going to be disappointed.
You can be a little disappointed.
Well, you're going to be disappointed, right? So go ahead and be disappointed, but at least pay attention to the disappointment and learn something from that. Look for that shift. Look for that monumental shift. And someday you're going to own a business and you're going to have a podcast with Jim Suhan.
And you throw the boss out.